Hello everyone, Ultimate Steve here, and welcome back to another episode of the Infinity Timeline. As you can probably hear, I'm pretty sick right now. I'm feeling a lot better though, but I was really sick for a while there, and that's why uploads have not been coming in recently. But the next video that I recorded a while back was about first generation lava reactor rockets. And I realized that I did not do a very good job in that video of explaining what exactly a lava reactor is and how it works, so I decided to make a video on lava reactors and mystic particles. Now, in the particle physics system for this storyline, there's three concepts you should be aware about before we progress into lava reactors properly. The first one of those is called a voxel, which is basically the Minecraft analog of an atom. Each block in Minecraft is made up of voxels, and it's a big open question in physics exactly how many different types of voxels there are, and which blocks are made of pure voxels. Because in real life, this is fairly easy to determine, but in the storyline, there's very little that differentiates one from the other. The second component is mystic particles. Now, mystic particles are kind of like a cross between subatomic particles in real life and photons in real life. Voxels will break up into different types of mystic particles when they are hit with other mystic particles, and they can also recombine to assemble back into voxels. And the third concept is that of a physics bolt. Now, physics bolts are not mentioned much, but they're basically what allow things to move. Like every one of those rockets, think of it as like an independently movable grid. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to keep them in the canon, because they were kind of a stupid idea. Now, a long time ago, before any of this was discovered, there was this such thing called mystic cobblestone, which was basically cobblestone that would float. And it represented the easiest way of obtaining a physics bolt. Like mystic cobblestone, it'll float and you can move stuff with it. Now, mystic cobblestone is kind of grown in a garden. You drop a bunch of stuff into the water and the mystic cobblestone will gradually grow out of the ground into boulder shapes. And this technology has been mostly a closely guarded secret, basically regarded as magic. Like to anyone who wasn't in the know, this was basically magic. Now, what was mystic cobblestone used for? It was used in skyships. Skyships are basically flying ships that use mystic cobblestone that can quickly transport people and a large amount of supplies between Minecraft worlds. Now, there's two different grades of mystic cobblestone. Well, actually, there's three, but we're only going to talk about the first two for now. Depending on the quality which is grown, mystic cobblestone will either lose its potency and crumble apart over time, a temporary mystic cobblestone, or it'll be good basically forever, a permanent mystic cobblestone. So this skyship uses the permanent kind, which is just permanently built into the structure of the ship. And this ship uses the temporary kind, which is usually stored in a furnace or a dispenser. If you see these sort of skyships all over the canon. These are pretty small ones, but they are the ones that I had nearby in this world. Now, skyships were around long before elytras came around, so they represented basically the only way to conduct long-distance transportation. So what does mystic cobblestone have to do with mystic particles? Absolutely nothing. It is, however, where mystic particles got their name from, because it was originally assumed that they had something to do with each other. But basically what happened, how lava reactors and mystic particles were first discovered, is there was this guy who was fighting a dungeon spawner. In a panic while trying to fight the monsters, he accidentally placed a redstone lamp down, and then accidentally placed a bucket of lava down, and then burned himself to death. All of his diamonds and gold fell into the lava, but when he came back to see if any stuff had survived, he noticed that the redstone lamp was on for some reason. After much further investigation, it was determined that he had accidentally created the world's first lava reactor, and began investigating it some more. So basically, how a lava reactor works is there's 5 components. There's the fuel itself, which is made out of voxels that, when easily hit by mystic particles, will split into more mystic particles. There's the medium, which in this case is lava. It allows mystic particles to travel freely through it without decaying. There's the casing, which will reflect mystic particles back into the lava. There's the vent, which will extract mystic particles. And there's the source, which provides the mystic particles to start this reaction off in the first place. In the case with the first lava reactor, the source was this thing. Monster spawners naturally emit a small amount of a certain type of mystic particle. The lava, in this case, is obviously the medium. There's no casing, so it's very inefficient. It's only enough to power one redstone lamp. But the redstone lamp serves as a vent. There's enough redstone energy coming out of this lava that just powers. And the fuel, of course, was this poor man's diamonds that burnt in the lava. Now, in this lava reactor, the fuel is emeralds. This is a much more mature design, designed for generating power. Not redstone power, but I'll get to that. The fuel is the emeralds. They gradually get eaten away in the lava, which is the medium. The source is not pictured, but presumably they have another source somewhere that they used for startup. The casing is glass, and the vent is obsidian. So when this was first discovered, they knew something weird was happening. So basically named it mystic particles, because we don't know how this works. Let's just call them mystic particles. Maybe it's the same thing as mystic cobblestone, even though it wasn't. But that's how they got their name, and the name stuck. So the medium inside the reactor is almost always lava. That's where they're called lava reactors. Lava, basically in air, mystic particles will not last very long. They'll travel like a few centimeters and then just decay due to interactions with the air. Lava, mystic particles can travel like for miles basically without decaying. At least all known mystic particle types. That makes it pretty much the only medium worth consideration due to its plentifulness. So yeah, while you could theoretically build one out of water if you really wanted to, it's just so much worse. And that's why they're called lava reactors, because this is the only one you'd ever consider. Now, as far as the casing goes, each casing will reflect different types of mystic particles and absorb some types of mystic particles. Glass reflects all but one type of mystic particle. It'll absorb the other type, but we'll talk about that in the lava reactor rocket video. And due to its cheapness, it is basically the only thing ever used in casings. Iron will reflect some mystic particle types, but not all of them. So it's used sometimes, but only in very specific situations. Like, for example, if you wanted to also use iron as a fuel at the same time and just kind of burn up your lava reactor while you were using it. Now, recently, netherite has been shown to be almost as good of a reflector as glass, while also being a lot stronger than glass. However, due to its high costs, there aren't very many organizations that can afford to build a lava reactor entirely out of netherite. Now, as far as the vents, you want to be able to extract some types of mystic particles in your reactor while leaving some other types in there. Now, depending on what you're actually doing, like, are you generating mystic particles for a particle accelerator or a radiation bombarder, or like even a weapon, or a power generating reactor, or do you want to power something with redstone, or do you want to build a rocket? There's a lot of different types you use for that. Now, for rockets, there's a type of mystic particle that basically reacts with magnetic fields. So in lava reactor rockets, you're essentially ejecting a bunch of these magnetically interacting mystic particles backwards, and you're essentially pushing off of Earth's magnetic field, which of course means they're not very good out of the moon, because the moon has no magnetic field. So the desirable characteristics in an event for this thing would be it's transparent to the type you need, and you can also vary how transparent it is, like with a signal. Now, far and away, the best block for this is bedrock, if you're generating with rest. However, bedrock is insanely expensive. Brick is significantly worse, but will also do in a pinch. Now, for power generating reactors, you want something that's transparent to the electrical particle, and obsidian is pretty much the only good choice for that. Now, as far as fuels go, if you want to generate thrust in a reactor, you generally want emeralds. Diamonds are slightly worse. Iron is significantly worse. And if you want to generate power, gold and lapis are frequently used due to their cost efficiency, although emerald is better, although usually more expensive, depending on how the villagers are feeling that day. Now, starting lava reactors up. If you just build this, it won't work because there's no mystic particles in it. You need something to get the reaction started. Now, early on, they're thinking, okay, let's just use a bunch of mob spawners. However, mob spawners only emit some of the particles you need. It's enough to make something that does redstone. And if you get really complicated, you might be able to start a power generating reactor with one of these, but it's very involved. So spawners are basically useless for anything other than redstone. And why would you even bother generating redstone power with this anyway? You can literally just get it with a redstone torch. Speaking of which, redstone torches will also start up one of these reactors. And also, by the way, I don't know if I mentioned it yet, but redstone signal is a type of mystic particle, redstone energy. So for a long time, the only way to start a lava reactor was to go to the end, manage to defeat the dragon without killing all of the crystals, which, by the way, you could not craft them back then. Then you'd build your lava reactor around the crystal and start it up that way. That would act as a mystic particle source to start up your reactor. And then you'd have to somehow transport that small reactor, maybe like to a pipe, through the end portal back to the overworld, and then take the reactor that you've just now started, and then crate it over via skyship to keep starting additional reactors you may need. Now, if your reactor dies, this is a problem, because then you have to connect it to another running reactor to keep it going, or reconnect it to an end crystal. Now, when Dragon's Breath was invented, this all got a lot easier, because you can just go fight the dragon, scoop up some Dragon's Breath in a bottle, chuck it into a lava reactor, and it'll start it just fine. However, this technology was not all around for a long time, so the hard made was how it was done most of the time. Back in the end crystal era, many reactors were operated with a smaller reactor right next to it, sometimes multiple, that were just active as backups in case the main ones somehow stalled out, so that they could just connect one to the other and have it restart. Now, the types of mystic particles. Nobody can agree exactly how many they are. It's still a field of active study. So these are the ones that mostly everyone agrees with. There's redstone, also known as the alpha particle, which is responsible for all normal redstone interactions. And there's very little reason you would want a lava reactor to generate redstone energy. Number 2, power particles. They basically behave like electricity in real life. They're also known as beta particles, and they're what most power reactors generate. Like this would be using power. So like basically you can make like computers, like miniature computers, without having to like do everything in redstone. Although you can also make mini computers in redstone, and that's how it was done for a long time. So high-end institutions will basically use electricity as a replacement for everything redstone because it's so much better, but so much more difficult. There's blast particles, which basically, they carry momentum, so they can also be used in a rocket. They're not as good as using other magnetic particles, and they're kind of hard to consistently generate because they tend to destroy your reactor. So generally you want to avoid producing these. They're also known as gamma particles. Now delta particles is the ones we're most interested in. Those are the ones that push off of magnetic fields and are used in lava reactor rockets. They're incredibly efficient compared to normal rockets, like many times as efficient, which allows most lava reactor rockets to be single-staged, as long as they stay in Earth's magnetic field. Then we have the epsilon particle, which is the memory/story particle. It's widely believed to be how our brains work in-game, how consciousness works. If you're exposed to a lot of these, you can expect to lose your memory, and that happens to a lot of characters in canon. You want to avoid generating these. However, there have been a lot of notable instances in which a lot of these were accidentally generated, causing people to lose their memory. Now, zeta particles. They're a bit of a weird case. Not everyone agrees with this one, whether it's a type of voxel or a type of mystic particle. They were only successfully synthesized 1 or 2 times by someone who really didn't know what they were doing at the time, kind of by accident. But it's thought that there's a particle out there that can cool things down, and that it can also crystallize into its own form of voxel, which, when applied to surfaces, those surfaces basically have 0 friction. And this was used during one of the very early space cannons. And there's the trigger particles. Now, I mentioned that glass absorbs 1 type of particle, and this is the trigger particle. When operating in thrust mode, like producing a lot of magnetic particles with emerald fuel and a few other common fuels, a lot of trigger particles will tend to be produced. And those will accumulate in the glass walls eventually. They don't do much, but if they reach some critical threshold, eventually you run into danger of accidentally setting them off. And when that happens, your entire reactor explodes, which is not good. And that is the main reason why first-generation lava reactor rockets were abandoned, because that problem was basically insurmountable. They did not know how to fix it. And lastly, there's the theta particles, which are also known as ender particles. They're basically how ender pearls work. There's 2 types of them. There's the normal, and then there's the anti ones. Basically, when one particle is reacted, whatever is located at the other end will teleport to the forward one. And that's how ender pearls work. There are a few other ships that use that technology, but I'll get into them later, because that's pretty much outside the scope of this video. There's also some emerging new technologies in the lava reactor game. Reinforced deep slate is good at carrying very high energy, high amounts of mystic particle, better so than the other ones. However, it's symmetric, it can only carry it axially, otherwise you'd use it for a casing. Like, it's a good reflector. Like, actually better so than glass. However, it's only reflective on the internal side, so unless you want to make your lava reactor a long stick, it is useless for anything other than ducting particles around. There's also skulk reactors, which basically you direct a burst of mystic particles at a bunch of skulk, and a bunch of weird things happen, which I will get to in a future video. There are also some people that believe, increasingly more, that experience is also its own type of mystic particle, but I won't get into that either. So that is a better view of how lava reactors operate that should help you understand any forthcoming videos where I mention them. So thank you so much for watching. Ultimate Steve out.